quilt block. So I am using up scraps that I have from this fabric that I had left over from another quilt. And so it's my opportunity to practice making quilt blocks that I may want to use for future projects. Now, I just noticed that I don't have the right thread in this machine. Okay, so we need to switch out our thread. Um, and I wind the bobbin for this one. So while I'm winding the bobbin, we'll talk a little bit about the blocks. So I am trying to make at least 12 to 16 blocks. I plan to pick blocks that are easy enough to make and that are user friendly for a new quilter. So, this way, if you are new to quilting, you're trying out different blocks that you would like to make, you want to work on different techniques, then these videos may work for you. These are standard blocks that can either stand alone or that could be mixed and matched. Now, the block size for all of the blocks will be 12 inches unfinished. That means before it is sewn into a row or into a quilt, it's 12 and a half inches unfinished. When you add a quarter inch seam allowance, it then becomes 12 inches finished. Oops. So we are making them all the same size just so that it's a little bit easier to work with them when we put the sashing in and we finish up those rows and we finish up a simple quilt. So sometimes it will be called a sampler quilt, and a sampler, just you get to sample different blocks, if you will. So that's what I'll be working on. We have enough of a bobbin here for the next couple videos that I do. These videos should not take a long time to do because they are, simple blocks to make. So it just depends on the type of block. So the more pieces that there are, the longer it will take. So some of these blocks have like a 9 patch effect. So it should take no longer than maybe me to do a video of about a half an hour. But if I were sewing this without talking and demonstrating, it might take me anywhere from maybe 15 to 20 minutes to make the block. Okay, so the block that we're making today is called the Shoo Fly block. And it is going to be 12 and a half inches square, unfinished. So in order to get this done, there are some things that we need. We are going to need 2 blocks that are any color that you choose. So I'm using this cool fabric. This is batik. And we need 2 blocks of the background. And these measure 5 inches square. Then we will need 1 block for the center, 4.5 inches square. And for each of the middles around this, I will need these that are also 4.5 inches square. So all of my blocks are going to be 4.5 inches when I finish them. So what we're going to do is start with our half square triangle. And in order to do that, we're going to make 2 at a time. And in order to make 2 at a time, we're going to take a colored piece of fabric and a background fabric. And we're going to line those up completely so that they're nice and even. I can look and see that my cuts are a little bit off, but that's okay. I will make all of that work. Like Tim Gunn says on Project Runway, make it work. And we're going to draw a line from one corner to the other corner. finger is in the way. That line got a little crooked. And we'll do the same thing here. This is not a seam line. This will be a cutting line. So when we make half square triangles, and we talked about that earlier, we sew on either side of the cutting line, and we sew a 1/4 inch. If you're a little concerned with your 1/4 inches getting a little crooked, my suggestion is to do what we like to call a scant 1/4 inch, and that means that it's a couple hairs shorter than a 1/4 inch. Not much shorter. I mean, you're not doing a 1/8 of an inch or a 1/4 inch. Or you can't do a 1/4 inch shorter if you wanted to. A 1/16 of an inch is like a hair shorter. And then what we do is take it to our machine and stitch on either side of the line. Okay, so it'll look like this. So the drawn line is here, and we have a 1/4 inch on either side. And then after we cut them open, what we'll end up with is a half square triangle. So we'll do the second one. And again, if you do a scant 1/4 of an inch, that just means that you're going to have just a little bit of extra fabric left over when you go to trim these blocks. Okay, cool. Now I can either use my scissors. This is personal preference. Most quilters nowadays use a lot of scissors. We're just going to cut that in half on that line that we drew, and we get a half square triangle. And we'll press these in a minute. Or you can use your ruler. Go back on that line that you drew, not on the cuts, not on the seams that you stitched, and just use your rotary cutter. Okay. And so again, everything is the way it's supposed to be. As in every video, when I talk about what I do with these, this is personal preference. So when you open these, you can either press the seam, some people say to the dark side. Some people prefer to press their seams open. That is personal preference. The theory behind it is that these two little pieces that are on the seam, this side of the fabric, when you open them up, you distribute the weight of the fabric on both sides of the seam. When you press it to this side, it's going to have 3 layers, if you will, of fabric on this side and only one on this side. What that does is that if you hold this up to the light, you don't see the shadow behind the lighter side. That's pressing to the dark side. Again, that's a personal preference for you. Sometimes when we want to do, and I'll show you that later, nest the seams, it makes sense to press it to one side. Some people prefer the evenness of pressing it open because they feel like, they don't want a lot of humps and bumps in their quilt right near the seams. So again, personal preference. Some people just do it the way that they were taught. And then over time, some of us have said, well, that makes sense. And then we've done it the way that other people suggest. Okay, so you can press it open. Whichever way I press it, I do like to turn it over on the right side and just nudge my iron just a little bit, just to make sure that there are no hills. And I get a nice flat press. And again, this is up to you which way you want to press them. Sometimes I have to nest my half square triangles and I prefer to do them closed, pressed to the dark side. Sometimes it doesn't matter. So it's just totally up to you in terms of preference. I would suggest trying it both ways, see which way you like better, and then you make the decision from there. It's just a way of like reducing the weight on either side. And in some cases, when you're stitching a lot of seams together, for example, if I were stitching these two together, sometimes there's a lot of bulk right where you stitched it. So we need to stitch. And I forgot again to bring my other ruler down here. So I'm going to have to use my TikTok ruler, which doesn't have a line that I like, but that's okay. So these blocks were 5 inches to begin with. We drew a line down the center, and then after we stitched on both sides, when we cut them, it made 2 units that we're now pressing open. So we went from 2 blocks to 4 blocks. These blocks, starting at 5 inches, will make close to a 4.5 inch half square triangle. Maybe a little bit bigger, which is sometimes why we use a scant 1/4 inch. So then that way we have a little bit of room to square it up. Okay. So here is the block here, the unit. And what we're going to do is take our ruler. We know that this has to be 4.5 inches. And so this is where we play with our block. I want the corner, the diagonal to be right in the corner. I know that this has to be 4.5 inches. So I'm going to trim this to get rid of all that little excess. So one side is done. And then I'm going to turn this 180 degrees. This time I'm going to use the inside and line this up to exactly the 4.5 inch mark. I want to make sure that at 4.5 inches, the diagonal is here and the diagonal is here. And then I'm going to cut. Trim up. And here's the pretty block. So this went from being like this with those dog ears here to looking like this. So I need 4 more, like 3 more like that. This is the part where you take your time. Like I said, there are rulers that have, so this ruler has lines on it. The problem is that the lines don't start here in the center where I would like it to, so that I could run this along here. So whoever made this, I don't know. I don't know if it was a fluke and that's why they sold it on the TikTok shop. Who knows? But I just want to make sure that everything is lined up the way that I need it. And then I trim. Okay, we'll turn this way. And we'll do the same thing. But again, remember, I'm looking at 4.5 inches in here. And because this is just a general pattern for a block, I can share the measurements. sometimes when we're making quilts, you can't share the measurements because somebody has figured out the calculations and they figured out how much fabric you needed and they worked on the design, and they deserve to be paid for their work. But the blocks are so common and there's so many free measurements and patterns out there that really nobody can charge just to show you how, like, the patterns for the blocks. So you can find those really without paying for them. Now, some people, because they'll tell you how much fabric you need and they will give you their own directions, may charge you for the block for that reason. But you can absolutely find these blocks free on the internet. Okay, and again, we are doing 4.5 inches. So I'm really taking my time to look to see where my endpoints are because I want to add the 4.5 going vertically, and I want to add 4.5 horizontally. And then I'm going to cut that excess off. And there's not a lot of excess. Okay, and one more. So once this is finished, right, this last one, we're ready to put these units together to create the block. So again, this is the Shoo fly block. Okay. Let's connect that one. And we'll do this one. And again, I'm paying attention to where my 4.5 is up here. Some people, if you're using the same size over and over again, they will mark their rulers with tape, and then that way you can see exactly where those marks are each time. Like, you don't have to eyeball it to get it right. Okay, so here's all the extra little bit of fabric, so it's not a lot. And we're ready to lay these blocks out. Okay, so we have 4. This is my center. Make sure that all of my blocks go in the right place. And again, this is a very easy block. As you can see how fast this will go together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So very quick and easy. This is the layout for the block. So now it's time to sew it together. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's a 9 patch. So how do we sew together 9 patches? I do them from right to left. You can absolutely go from left to right. You could go from top to bottom. It doesn't matter. But what you're going to do is line up your first 2 blocks. In each row. And then we're just going to stitch right down. I'm going to do a 1/4 inch seam, and I am going to chain stitch them. That means that I'm not going to break the thread after each unit that's sewn together. And you can do a back stitch if you like. Um, I don't always do it, and it really like is not going to like really hurt anything. But you know, if you feel the need to do it, you can absolutely. So just stitching those together, keeping them in order, so I know how they go together and they stay in the order that I want them going. I'm trying to make sure that my seams stay on the right side. Okay. So it looks like this. If I am not crossing my seams, I can just go ahead and now add this to this side. Okay. If I'm crossing my seams, I need to take it to the iron and iron it. But I'm not crossing the seams other than the ones that I've already pressed. Okay, that's column one. On either side of my colored one, I have this. So we can go ahead and add this one here. Okay. And then again, this is on this side. So this is going to be on that side. I try to make sure that I'm putting these in the right direction because, yeah, I can absolutely turn something around and then have to seam rip it out. It happens. That's what they make seam rippers for. And we just rip them out and we just do them again. And better to catch the error before you put everything together. Okay. So then we can lay this back out again just to see it. Okay. And everything is in the order it's supposed to go into. So what I am going to do is now iron this. And this time when I iron this, because I want to nest my seams, I want to nudge them up so that the quarters line up perfectly. I'm going to press these out. I'm going to press these in, and I'm going to press those out. So they're going to go in opposite directions. And again, you could press them flat or press them open rather. It's totally up to you. I just feel like when I press to the dark side, I get a better fit. Did I press? Nope, pressed the wrong way. And to press those in. Okay. And then we'll press these out. Okay. Let's flip these over. Time to get out my clips. So I'm going to flip the first two over. This is why I don't break the chains because they just stay in order. You could see the seams, they're going in opposite directions. So when I take these and line the seams up together, because there's bulk on one side of each of those units, the bulk kind of stops the seam from moving across the lines. And because of that, they do what's called nest or lock. And I can clip it. Same thing on this side. And if all your seams are accurate, or very close to being accurate, you can get them to just line up just perfectly. And I'm just putting the clip in the seams because that's where I want to make sure that when I run over this with my with my presser foot, they don't shift and then I'm not completely off. Is this 100% guaranteed? Absolutely not. Okay, and then we'll do this one. I tried it and I know which way I pressed it, but I do want to make sure that my seams are going in the right direction so they're not twisting. Okay, and if they're lined up perfectly, I should have a point that looks like that, a corner that looks like that. So we'll take these back to the machine, line up our edges, and then we're just going to stitch these two rows together. I can do a back stitch, get close to that seam. I'm holding it down with my finger. My presser foot is stopping my finger from going under the needle. Just be careful if you have an open toe. You don't want to, you trust me, you don't want to catch your finger under that needle. You could use a stiletto or some other pointy edge if you need to, rather than your finger. Like I said, I have a little bit of a guard there with my sewing machine foot that it's not going to run under it. Okay, so when I stitch these together, those corners should match up. And the key word is should. Okay, and then let's do the other one. So then once we finish this part, the block, other than a press, is done. And then we're ready for the next block. So we are attempting to do at least one block a day. So within 2 weeks, we will have all the blocks that we need for a cute little quilt. They will be 12 inches by the time they get sewn in. So 12 inches, there will at least be, if we do 4x4, and the quilt size would be 48 inches before we add any sashings, borders, or anything else like that. But this is a great way to use up scraps and also practice techniques. Okay, and so again, your corners should be perfect. Okay, and then we'll take it back. And again, you make that decision on how you want to press your seams. You can press those seams open. You can press them to one side. That's up to you. Okay. And I think, so other than doing a real heavy press, the block is finished. Sometimes when you press it on the one side, it'll fold on you. And that's why I like to come in on this side and just give it like one good final press. And if I have to just pull it out just a little bit, I don't want to stretch the block because then I lose the sizing of it. Like you'll have one side that'll be like, one side will be like 12 and a half, and then the other one will be like 12 and 5. 6, 7, 8, 9/16, 5/8. And you're like, why is this off? And it's off because you did some pulling that you didn't need to do. Okay. And here is our finished block. So this is the shoe fly. So we've now finished 2 blocks, and we only have possibly 14 more to go. So stay tuned, because again, we're trying to make a block a day, um, using simple and easy patterns to make 12.5-inch square blocks. So stay tuned.